Oh yeah, party on! Turn that down a little bit. That's right, damn it. It's Friday. We're gonna get wild tonight. If you've never been there for one of the gaming streams, we're gonna do a long one with Hammer of Venus. Hells yeah. How's it going out there in Radio Land? I'm good and fired up for tonight, but yet at the same time, I am pissed. Like, I am so over so many fucking things right now. I'm telling you. Just the amount of lies and the amount of gaslighting, like how much can one person take before they just fucking snap? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about lies and how lies are consistently weaponized to ensure that, well, a certain fascist regime always remains with a squeaky clean image. Because if there's one thing we've learned about Christian nationalism, is that it's more important to look like a good person than to actually be a good person. What do I mean by that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this clip, shall we?
And soon release a chilling snapshot.
Okay, thanks for that. I was messing with the sound volume, and I must have unfortunately muted it. That's what happens when you do a live show. So, take a look at this, and you're going to know exactly the moment that they start talking about the main point of this video. You're going to be like, yep.
Law enforcement soon release a chilling snapshot of the attacker wearing a rubber mask dressed up as a cop, in a scenario that seems like it's straight out of The Purge. Now, there are a lot of things I could say about this event, and I'm sure all of you watching this can as well. Obviously, it's just the latest development in a country where right-wing extremism has been consistently ramping up, and now has been empowered. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm not just here to give a news report. I'm here to talk about a pattern in our political discourse that reoccurs every time something like this happens. The victims of this series of shootings were two Democratic lawmakers and their spouses. Not one, but two Democrat lawmakers. The political motive of this attacker is obvious. Yet, as soon as the news started making the rounds, people on the right got busy flooding the airwaves anywhere they could that the shooter was actually someone on the left, warning people about the dangers of leftist extremism.
Have you ever noticed that the moment that something happens where it makes the right look bad, instantly all the little NPC bots, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or I don't know, your farm fash Uncle Jed, immediately they all start parroting the same talking points. Now, why is that? Well, we're going to go into a deep dive about that exactly.
The right, the memo got out that they would all collectively deny the obvious. They were going to pretend and try to convince everyone or at least themselves, that the shooter was definitely not one of their own, but that he was on the left, one of the bad guys. And people on the right bought in. From random commentators on social media all the way up to Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr., the right got together to collectively gaslight everyone into thinking the shooter was not one of them.
And that's one of the reasons I think that Elon Musk bought Twitter, was to be able to ensure that, you know, if there was a narrative that needed to be spun, that he'd be one of the first ones to do it and he could amplify whatever he wanted.
Even after the police revealed that the shooter kept a hit list of other Democratic lawmakers and abortion providers in his car, Republican Senator Mike Lee still blamed the attacks on Marxists and even added a little joke attaching the attack to Tim Walz. Now, it's tempting to look at this and feel disgusted.
Now, I know that this might seem like a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I have the opinion that the person who did those assassinations and had that list of lawmakers was intentionally set up and paid to do those, because the idea was to start martial law. Because if there was all of a sudden this slew of Democrats being assassinated, that was going to cause some serious backlash. And what Trump has been looking for is that backlash so that he can declare martial law. But he was stopped. So I find that rather convenient that he had an entire list of Democrats to assassinate.
Get angry at the gleeful, shameless lying. But what I want you to know is that this is not a new tactic at all. You see, I've been following politics for a while now, and I've watched the right wing try to pull this off many times, and honestly, it's getting old. The right has industrialized this tactic. Every time right-wing violence happens, they lie. They blame the left, and they make sure that no one on their side is ever at fault. They keep this up until the rest of us get exhausted trying to establish basic reality, until something else takes over the news cycle and takes the heat off of them. And it's not a one-off. It's not an accident. It's a defense mechanism, and I'm sorry to say this, but the time is ticking down to when we see another senseless act of right-wing violence. And when we do, we're going to see this exact same tactic again, and it will be deployed to keep us from discussing the real source of this violence and the ideas behind it. That's why I'm making this video, to expose the pattern and to make sure that you, the viewer, will be able to recognize it when it shows up again. By the end of this video, I want you to be able to understand what this looks like. You'll understand why the right uses tactics like this, the role that it serves in their ideology, and most importantly, we'll discuss how we can combat this the next time it shows up. Now, in order to show you that this is a reoccurring pattern, I've thrown together a list of highly publicized violent events in recent history. Some of them were political in nature, some were not. In all cases, the right wing responded to them by accusing the perpetrators of being on the left. Here's what that looks like. For my first example, I'm going to go all the way back to 2015. This is a real OG example from when I just started following politics. In 2015, an extremist anti-abortion Christian man attacked a Planned Parenthood location in Colorado Springs. The shooter...
Okay, an extreme religious man who attacked an abortion clinic. Let's see which side of the political aisle this gentleman resides on.
Killed 3 people, including 1 police officer, and 9 other people were shot but survived. People who knew the shooter described him as being obsessed about his religious views and his opposition to abortion. Court documents going all the way back to 1993 had testimony from his ex-wife describing him as claiming to be extremely Christian, and believing that he's allowed to do whatever he wants as long as he's saved by God in the end. Now, the reason why I remember this event so
I find that extremely convenient that Christian nationalists feel that they can do whatever it is that they want as long as they're saved in the end. You know, fuck being a good person on earth, but no matter what dastardly deeds you do, you can always ask for forgiveness in the end. That kind of crazy psychological makeup is not good for a healthy society.
Distinctly is because it really opened up my eyes to how shameless certain people were in lying. The shooter's motivations were obvious, given the target, But that didn't stop people on the right, and in particular, Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz from claiming that the shooter was actually, in fact, a transgender leftist activist. Clearly, this was a lie that was as convincing.
Did you notice that clip? I mean, that article said maybe. So basically, in order to stay within the idea that the right are untouchable, perfect little baby angels, that when one of their own commits a crime, instantly they might be a transgendered leftist. Okay.
Convenient for the liar as it was obvious. Perhaps there are earlier examples of this kind of lie, but it is the earliest one that I personally remember, and it is only the first of a type of lie I was going to see again and again. The next time I saw this happening was in the 2017 mass shooting in Las Vegas. This was one of the worst mass shootings in United States history, and I actually have some connection to this one as a family member was supposed to be in Vegas that night for a business meeting. As it turned out, they were nowhere near the shooting when it happened, but it was still scary, and I can only imagine the pain of people who knew or lost loved ones who were there. In any case, this is one of the shootings on my list that was not political in motive, even if it did take place at a time when gun control was a hot topic of debate. To this day, there's no clear motive for this shooting, even if we did figure out that the shooter was not mentally well, to say the least. However, that didn't stop the right wing from going out and spreading the lie that the shooter was either a part of Antifa, ISIS, or both. Keep in mind, at this time in political discourse, both immigration from Muslim...
What I'm really having a huge problem with, and I'm seeing even videos pop up about like the origin of Antifa, we need to start pointing out that people that point out that anti-fascism are bad. Like, for some reason, anti-fascism has been made to be a boogeyman, but yet they constantly claim that the left are fascists. This video completely explains everything that you get so mad that you want to spit nails about when you know that it's a blatant fucking lie.
Countries and Antifa were central themes in right-wing rhetoric. It's hard to overstate how common these claims were, but the simple fact was that there was never any evidence that came out to support them, so even some on the right were never convinced, which is how we got incredibly funny clips like this. This is Alex Jones talking to his co-host Paul Joseph Watson. Now, Watson isn't around much nowadays, but back then, he was one of the biggest names in the alt-right, and it's pretty clear from this clip that even he's not buying it.
It wasn't left-wing, it wasn't right-wing, it wasn't an Islamic terrorist, it was just a mindless act of evil. It does happen sometimes where you just get mentally deranged people.
Let me stop you. We've got breaking news here, Paul Watson. And no cameras, please, guys. No cameras. This is from a law enforcement source, and the information is the news is lying. FBI HRT did the hit on the guy, and they found Antifa information in the room and photos of the woman in the Middle East. So he did not kill himself. The FBI hostage rescue team killed him because he was firing on them, and it was Antifa crap everywhere and other things I'm not supposed to mention. That is directly from the hostage rescue team, by the way, Paul. And I'm going to delete this information now. Keep going.
Well, obviously, that's huge. That's huge if it turns out to be true.
Yeah, hey, Paul, this is from high-level CIA, right here. Let's do directly from, and this is from the hostage rescue team. You know I don't make sources up. Go ahead.
No, all I'm saying is that I'm going on the information I have, and I don't know.
No, absolutely. I'm just saying this is big breaking news. This is huge. In fact, you go ahead and take over the next 4 minutes. You host. I'm going to run in here and get with the writers. Go.
My next example is not actually a shooting, but a plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, in 2020. The 13 men involved.
So I had to take myself off screen. I wanted to make sure that he was able to see Alex Jones completely freaking out, trying to make up lies on the spot, shaking paper, pretending like it's actually valid. Dude got sued for lying.
When they were caught and arrested were in the middle of carrying out a plot to kidnap the governor and even possibly kill her. in retaliation for her COVID-19 lockdown policies. Now, pretty much all of the perpetrators were deep into right-wing ideology. Social media posts show engagement with right-wing conspiracy theories, QAnon, anti-vaccine, and pro-Trump sentiments, as well as the fact that many of them were members of right-wing militias. However, 1 out of the 13 men mentioned attending a Black Lives Matter protest, so that was enough for the right to label the whole thing a leftist Antifa false flag. Next is January 6th.
Yeah, the idea that nuance actually exists, like, that's beyond anything, like, what fascists can comprehend, because they only work in extremes, either extreme left or extreme right. The idea of being neutral or being in the middle, that's nuance. You can't have that. So the moment that they were able to say that one person went to a Black Lives Matter rally, now instantly the whole thing can just be painted as that. It's completely disingenuous, and they know it.
This one should need no explanation. What's important here is that the right didn't seem to know what their narrative on this would be. Of course, today they seem to have settled on agreeing that it was a heroic and righteous act, but at the time they quickly shifted between justifying it, saying that it wasn't really that bad, to saying that it was actually instigated by, you guessed it, Antifa. I heard right.
When I was confronted with this logic, I would always ask, okay, so why did Trump need to pardon a bunch of Antifa then? Why is that? And instantly it was, well, some of them were feds and some of them were, they didn't get due process. Well, then, I mean, then how did some of them get appeals? All you have to do is just ask questions, but by the time that you get the chance to ask questions, the lie is already circulated around the fucking world 3 times. That's a big problem that we're having here in Germany with TikTok. People believe everything they see on the internet, and that's a scary thing for a society that once had a problem with right-wing disinformation, just embracing it again. Yeah, we're living in dodgy times, gang.
Right-wingers both saying this online and in real life. This was a thing they believed, or at least pretended to believe. My next example is the attack on Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, in 2022, when an attacker invaded their home and attacked Paul Pelosi with a hammer. Nancy was not home at the time of the attack, but she was in fact the attacker's main target. Now, this example is obviously politically driven, with the perpetrator having a public record of embracing many right-wing ideas and beliefs. So the right-wing, and I'm talking about the mainstream right-wing across the board, got together to say everything from calling it a false flag attack and spreading the idea that the whole thing was actually a fight between gay lovers. Now, this lie does double duty, as it mocks Nancy Pelosi by saying her 80-year-old husband had an affair with another man, and it blames LGBT folk for the violence. Charlie Kirk, who is a main...
And that's one of the reasons why that lie was so vile, is because not only was it a straight-up lie, but also they try to use their lies to also smear other people simultaneously, and that is so fucking disgusting.
Mainstream and well-regarded figure on the right made a public call on his own show for someone in his audience to bail out the attacker from jail.
Why is the Republican Party, why is the conservative movement to blame for gay schizophrenic nudists that are hemp jewelry makers breaking into somebody's home, or maybe not breaking into somebody's home? Why are we to blame for that exactly? And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like 30 or 40,000 bucks. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
My next example is the 2022 shooting in Buffalo.
But notice that went completely quiet when he went to court and was found guilty and said that, yeah, he was radicalized by Trump. All of a sudden, crickets, just like it never fucking happened.
Buffalo, New York. Now, this one is very political. All of the 10 people murdered here were black, and the shooter was a far-right white supremacist who published a manifesto parroting textbook alt-right claims and ideas, including the idea of the Great Replacement and white genocide, which figures like Tucker Carlson had made a central theme on their shows at the time. Again, this did not stop some on the right from trying to muddy the waters by saying that he was on the left. Next is the 2018 Parkland school shooting. This was one of the worst school shootings in American history. Now, this did not have a political motive, but it came at a politically tense time, with Trump being just a year into his first presidency and with gun control being a hot topic at the time. This shooting kicked off one of the most intense and sustained efforts to get gun control legislation in recent history. Given all this, it's not a surprise that the right spread lots of conspiracy theories and lies about the people involved, from the survivors to the shooter himself. The one I'll point out is where the right spread a photo of a completely unrelated guy wearing a Communist Party t-shirt and claiming that the shooter was, you guessed it, a member of Antifa. Finally, I have the 2022 Uvalde school shooting. 21 victims lost their lives in this horrific event. Again, there's a lot I can say about this, but for the purposes of this video, I'm only focusing on the elements pertaining to public discourse. Now, in the aftermath of the shooting, there were again calls for more gun control legislation, and this one went further than usual. Memorably,
it almost seems like because America is so used to having mass shootings that, you know, it's a feature, not a bug, for the gun lobbyists. Because the moment that attention starts to get paid to the absolute corruption of the gun lobbyists to Congress, instantly the attention has to get shifted to some boogeyman. So, I mean, the pattern it's infallible.
this incident drove Matthew McConaughey, who, as I understand, is a pretty conservative guy himself, to visit the Biden White House and publicly advocate for gun control laws. So there's the gun control angle, which the right wing typically resists. But there was another angle to this tragedy. You see, this shooting happened when the memory of the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd protests were still fresh, and skepticism of policing in America was still a hot topic, with, again, the right wing resisting this. And after the shooting in Uvalde, details about how the police dealt with this began to be a topic of conversation. You see, the police arrived 3 minutes after the shooting began, but took over an hour to actually confront the shooter. And now the world had an hour's worth of footage of police officers standing around while a school shooting was happening, and not rushing in, but instead arresting parents and
they just wear the tactical gear to look intimidating, but when the time comes for them to actually do the shit that tactical gear requires, nothing. Yeah, like I said, the clip said they even arrested parents. Then now they can't go after the shooter. No, but they can arrest the parents. Do you remember at one time it said to serve and protect on the doors of police cars? Notice it doesn't say that anymore. Just my opinion. Police aren't there to prevent crime. They're there to respond to crime.
Even another police officer who tried to run in to save their own families. So what did the right do? They said that the shooter was trans. Seriously, they took a picture of a trans person off of Reddit and spread it around and tried to turn it into evidence that being trans made...
With no evidence at all, they just grab what they want and just instantly make a fucking narrative out of it just because they always have to make sure that they look squeaky clean. That's why I had to play this clip, because when I see it, it makes my fucking blood boil. It's like, you know you're shitty people. You know you espouse shitty views. So when shitty things actually happen because shitty people listen to the shitty things you say, all of a sudden it's not your fault and they have to shift blame. No. Fuck that. Fuck that. We're calling it out. This pattern has gotta stop.
Made people deranged and violent. So this is the pattern. Something bad happens. Something bad that implicates the right wing and their ideas. Sometimes the motive isn't even political at all, but the right knows that the event makes a powerful argument in favor of gun regulation. So the right collectively decides that they're going to act like the perpetrator was on the left, or they were trans, or an immigrant, The only point is to mark the perpetrator as belonging to an outgroup that the right-wing demonizes, to convince themselves that the event was something external to them, something that requires no introspection about what it is about their rhetoric or ideas that caused this to happen. And so the lie gets out. While the authorities and the media are still busy figuring out what happened and who did it, still digging deeper and holding off until they can get more confirmed facts, the right gets a head start on making sure their lies make their way around the world. In those crucial hours or days in between the event and the facts coming out, the right already has their narrative flooding the airwaves. And it doesn't matter that we can debunk them quickly. It doesn't matter that we can point out that they're just making things up. The fact that we have to debate the lies is the point. In many of the examples that I brought up, the takeaways are obvious. The right-wing motives behind the violence are obvious.
I've actually talked to people who said, I just don't even look to those kind of things anymore, talking about civic matters or terrorism, for lack of better words. Not only because A, it didn't affect them at the time, and B, they're just like, there's so much stuff out, I don't know what's the truth. So, you know, I don't even bother. I don't even fool with it. And it's like, whoa. This is exactly what the playbook is for authoritarians, is get people to question everything, no matter how factual it is, as long as it fits your narrative. That's the most important thing, is it has to fit your narrative. Facts be damned. In fact, the more information and facts that you put forward, the more they're going to dig themselves in and just entrench further into their gaslit beliefs.
Even if the perpetrator hasn't been found yet, even if the manifesto hasn't been found yet, the right does not bring up their bad faith arguments because they expect anyone to be convinced by them. They do it because every moment we're stuck debating and correcting their lies is a moment that we're not pointing out the actual causes, the actual motives behind the violence. And when the facts finally do come out, when the police confirm what everyone already knew, that the shooter was not a trans leftist or an Antifa agent, there's no correction, no apology, no retraction. Not a single moment of the right admitting, we got this wrong. It just disappears under the rug, and somehow
the ghost of Roy Cohn just runs the entire political system. Did you hear that shit? Never, ever admit wrongdoing. Always just counterattack. The rules that Trump says they're actually his rules, but he actually stole them from Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn stole those from Goebbels because the Fash Kant original. But yeah, no retraction. No, we were wrong. Let's not do that again. No. They know they were wrong. They're happy to be wrong, because if you point out that they're wrong, they say, I don't care. When you finally get them into a corner, they'll literally say, I don't care. Still voting Trump. Remember? Don't care. Still voting Trump? Yeah, exactly. They don't care if they're liars.
how the people who told these lies don't lose any credibility. The next time something happens, the cycle begins again. So as you can see, this is something the right does a lot. What we're saying now is nothing new. And why should they stop when it works so well for them? Now, to be clear, by working, I don't mean that it's actually convincing the general public. I don't see much evidence of that at all. So if it's not about convincing others, what is it about? You see, I'd like to introduce to you a concept that I'm calling psychological indulgence. It's going to be a concept that comes up on my channel often, and it's how I describe what is the ultimate goal of all reactionary politics: a refusal to tolerate psychological discomfort, cognitive dissonance, or self-doubt. Let's look at how this works in this case.
Yeah, if their worldviews are challenged at all, they're going to crash out. And worst thing that can happen for an extreme narcissist is to crash out, because sometimes that shit turns violent, like for the people around them.
The lies that we just looked at are blatant lies. The right-wing political motives behind much of the violence that we just looked at are blindingly obvious. Trans leftists are not the ones going out shooting up Planned Parenthoods, okay? So why lie about something that's so easily disproven? Well, other than the rhetorical purposes I just went over,
because
the lies
they
serve
can.
the purpose of securing psychological comfort for the reactionaries repeating them. You see, it's not about convincing you, or even the general public. It's about convincing themselves. Convincing themselves of what, you might ask? Convincing them that first and foremost, their side, their tribe, and the ideas that they believe in can never be wrong. To a reactionary, nothing they believe in can be acknowledged to result in harm. No one, and I mean no one that is on their side, in their tribe, can be acknowledged as having done anything wrong. I'm not being
I genuinely think that's why narcissists are attracted to this regime and its thinking, because how many of them, as a diagnosed narcissist who had to go to therapy, it's really easy because you are, it's usually born out of a sense of survival because of different kind of situations that you've had to deal with, especially alone. You get the idea that I'm the only person that I can fucking depend on. And when you get to thinking like that, it becomes real easy to be like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, I'm looking out for number one. And you'll gaslight yourself to ensure that you remain just squeaky clean. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, being able to say I'm sorry and being able to use empathy is kryptonite to narcissists. And that's why when you're in an argument with these cats, you'll never get a I was wrong. You'll never get a I was sorry, or maybe I can think about that. Nope, goalposts will just be moved.
facetious. Do not underestimate how totalizing the reactionary mind can be. I have had debates with right-wingers I know personally where they bring up some apparent instance of people on the left, like Antifa, committing violence or property damage. And when I reply that I can point out right-wing violence too, like the January 6th insurrection or the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the reply was, those were both caused by Antifa. They were Antifa pretending to be on the right to make Trump supporters look bad. And the reply was instant. I'm telling you, it was like a reflex. Another time, a reactionary sent me an article about a Black Lives Matter protester apparently punching someone at a protest. I pointed out that I could send them stories of right-wingers doing violent things too. And I'm not kidding, this person challenged me to find even one story of a right-winger committing political violence. They seriously believed none existed. This tactic of saying that every right-winger that does something...
Well, the thing is when you finally do give them the proof that it is that they've been asking for, they'll still dismiss it. I can't even tell you how many times that's happened to me. I mean, you know, saying, well, we're in the best economy we've ever had. And I point out that last quarter was actually a negative GDP growth. And the only reason we have growth in this quarter is because people front loaded all the goods that they need that they might get tariffed on, because they know the tariffs are coming. And if you look at the stock market right now, which is the big indicator, according to fucking Scott Jennings, of economic success, is the stock market. Well, look at the numbers. Look how low it opened at today because of these uncertain fucking tariffs.
Something bad is actually a trans leftist fulfills several functions. First, in the mind of a reactionary, conceding that anyone that shares their ideas, or even a political label with them, did anything wrong amounts to allowing the liberal or leftist to score a single point. In this case, to acknowledge reality amounts to allowing the person on the left to win the debate. But if the reactionary can keep the debate on the first level, of debating the very identity of the perpetrator, of making the person on the left argue with a brick wall to establish reality, then the debate can be kept at a level where the reactionary can be protected from the possibility of being made to feel shame, or being made to answer uncomfortable questions about their ideology. And
that's what I was talking about by the whole crash out thing, is the moment they have to do that self-reflection, they go, oh, fuck, wait a minute, am I the baddie?
It's not an accident that the right always goes to calling the perpetrators leftists or saying that they're transgender. This is a tactic to project violence from their own side onto groups that they're already comfortable hating. Reactionaries are primed to believe the worst things about these groups of people, and by projecting all of the bad parts of their own side onto them, they are able to keep their in-group pure, at least in their own minds. But this lying fulfills a function beyond what it does to the outside world. Lies like these, which are exclusive to the right-wing reactionary world, also fulfill a social function, in which the willingness to publicly profess belief in the lie serves to prove one's allegiance to the in-group. By loudly and aggressively making public statements affirming the lie, one demonstrates loyalty to the right-wing cause. Again, repeating the lie is not so much meant to convince the outside world. The lie functions as a loud, public middle finger to liberals, to the left, to the mainstream media. It's a display that says that they will not be swayed by the shill liberal establishment's moralizing, and the pure speed at which they rush to repeat the lie.
Basically, they'll believe what they want to believe, how they want to believe, when they want to believe it. Facts be damned. And the more that, like I said, you try to actually prove that they're wrong, the further in that they'll entrench.
Signals to other reactionaries of how in touch they are with the wider movement. And this is why so many of the comments and posts that you see that repeat these lies have this gleeful quality to them. The act of repeating the lie is a way of asserting the reactionaries' power over psychological discomfort, and their power over the person on the left who tries to change their mind with facts. The lie has an outer function.
I swear, most fascists, like, they must not have, like, gotten any hugs, or they got too many hugs, or they didn't get invited to parties, or they got stuffed in lockers or something. I don't know. Or they're failed screenwriters or failed painters. But that eternal sense of victimhood, like, along with the idea that they're just God's gift, just absolute perfect human beings. No wonder they found a cult leader in Donald Trump, because that's exactly how he acts. And it does give people genuinely permission to be the worst versions of themselves.
And an inner function. On the outside, it keeps out the challenges and questions that the truth poses to them. It protects their psychological comfort and their sense of being right and justified in their beliefs. In facing inward towards people on their own side, the lie functions to signal their loyalty to the in-group, to prove the lengths that they will go to stick it to the enemy. So yes, the lying is obvious, and it is pathetic, but we can't just ignore it. Even if it is the case that these lies aren't catching up with the general public, we need to combat them everywhere we see them. The lies are self-soothing, and they are meant for other reactionaries to see, but that doesn't mean that the people repeating the lies also don't mean to damage public discourse. The lies might not actively convince the public that all these shootings are actually caused by trans leftists, but that doesn't mean that they're not successfully confusing public discourse and preventing the left side of arguments from catching on. Because the truth is that many of these shootings are in fact caused by right-wingers, and this fact makes it very easy, some would say obvious, to take a look at these ideas and the people espousing the ideas after something like this happens. The reactionary liar doesn't have to convince everyone. They only have to keep the left so busy responding to them that they never get a chance to make their own narratives catch on. So, the general public never hears a sustained discussion about the right-wing ideas that led to the tragedy, about criticisms of the Republican gun policies that led up to the tragedy. No, the only thing that a reactionary needs is for the general public to see nothing but confused bickering, and to walk away with the resigned feeling of just another day in America. And that's what makes this narrative truly dangerous, because it's a unified and
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Get to the point where people are like, I don't even know what's real, I don't know what's not, so I just don't fool with it. That's fucking dangerous. That's real dangerous.
sustained effort to prevent any solutions from being discussed and implemented. And that's why I'm now going to discuss what anyone who cares about the truth, on the left or anywhere, can do about it. Now, I told you all of that stuff not just to vent. Knowing the psychology behind the lies and the effect that they're having on discourse is only the first step in figuring out what the solution is. And here's where I'd like to propose mine. So first of all, I've been heartened to see that in many social media spaces, people have been really good at pointing out and responding to the people spreading these reactionary lies. But in my humble opinion, we need to go further. Pushing back and debunking is a necessary but not sufficient condition for defeating these lies. Given what we've looked at here, it's a mistake to engage with these people spreading these lies as if they are sincerely mistaken. The people going out and saying these things are not people who are simply in need of more information. When you or I argue with these people, it is not for the sake of changing the liar's mind or getting them to stop repeating the lie. It is for...
I think before he even says anything, I'm going to give my opinion. Maybe our opinions line up. It's exhausting to have to combat their lies. They're not going to change their mind. But what you can do is put the information out there so that someone who is no idea on the topic actually can walk away with the truth. And then maybe they can use that in their discourse later on down the line. It's a pain in the ass, but it is our job to face lies head on. You have a camera on your phone. You can talk about the current lie that's being said and give the truth, and it can take less than 2 minutes. All that matters is that the truth is out there just as much as the lies. And eventually, maybe more people will want it to be out there more than the lies. And unfortunately, the lies are just really well funded.
For the benefit of anyone who might see what you have to say. And that means that we need to go beyond debunking. So here's what we do. So first of all, it's always good to debunk the claim on its own terms. Point out that the lie is unsubstantiated, or even better, positively disproven. But like I said, this is necessary and not sufficient. We need to make it clear to everyone watching that this is an old, repeated tactic. For the general public that isn't plugged into politics, we want them to walk away with the context that this is an old, sad trick, and it is one that they are going to see again. So how I would handle this is that I would follow up by directly calling out the tactic for what it is. Say direct that the right wing does this every time a tragedy occurs, especially when it was clearly caused by someone on the right. Then copy and paste a list of all the other times in recent history that the right tried this, only to pretend like nothing happened when they were proven wrong. Then I think it's a good idea to follow up with a little bit of mockery. Point out the fact that the liar is unoriginal or is hiding from something, because both those things are true. Yeah, it's not by the book debate, but this is the world we're living in now.
I hate to say it, but mockery is the Achilles heel of fascism. You can call them the worst people on earth. You can point out the examples of the horrible shit that they appreciate and support, and they'll say, yeah, it's fucking based. It's what I voted for. But the moment that you start mocking them, I mean, why do you think that, they were crashing out over South Park? And I do mean crashing out, being like, this is hate speech. But yeah, when they have wraps on their truck of Joe Biden, like hogtied. Oh, we're just trolling. It's okay. We're just trolling. I have never met a bigger bunch of fucking snowflakes in my life than these modern day fascists. They can dish it out, but man, can they not take it.
Now, just look at this video. The fact that I had to make this video proves that FAIR has left the building, and it's not our fault. You don't need every non-political observer to memorize the full list. You just want there to be a widespread recognition. This is what the right does. It should become a duh, the sky is blue kind of thing. Make it known far and wide so the next time it happens, more people recognize it and more people won't fall for it. Okay, so there are some thoughts I want to add on before signing off. These lies, these denials of reality, they're a part of our political discourse now. In my opinion, they got a false start in 2016 to 2017 with the original rise of Trumpism and the alt-right. But it truly found its footing during COVID, and now under Trump's second presidency. It's here and it's everywhere, and it's going to be here for a while. But if there's anything that you take away from my channel, it's that resignation and hopelessness are not an option. It is possible to fight back, and I want us all to do it together. I'm making this video because what's at stake isn't merely the facts of any one single event. It's about protecting the possibility of having a shared reality. And things are bad right now. The right wing has very successfully taken over the airwaves and the algorithm. I'm trying to do my part to fix this with my own channel and platform, but the truth is that this is something we can and must fix together. Even if you're...
That's right. It is something that we can and must fix together. I completely agree with them. Don't give up hope. Just trust me. There's things that you can do. There's things that you can say, just by watching programs like this or like Tony Michaels. There's just don't worry, because the truth always wins in the end. And we're seeing that as we speak with this whole Epstein shit. In fact, speaking of that, you're watching ViperTV. Stick around.
We play you for a sucker. He knew you wanted to know the truth about the Epstein list.
We need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
So you voted for Donald Trump. How's that working out?
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Elon demanded you release the Epstein files. Meanwhile, you sent ICE into Los Angeles. A perfect distraction. Trump thinks you're stupid. He can distract you. Trump's old friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, got 20 years for child sex trafficking.
I just wish her well, frankly.
20 years for child sex trafficking. But there's no record of who she trafficked the children to? Really? Donald Trump is president of the United States. If he wanted you to see the Epstein list, he'd release it. But he's not.
I don't know about Epstein so much. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
He played you for a sucker. MAGA, you gonna just shut up and fall in line like all the rest? Really?
That's the question. Are you? Because they're doing it right out in public. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this. This sums it up perfectly. Ghislaine Maxwell is setting the stage to exonerate Trump for a pardon and take down only Democrats. If they say Clinton's in there, I don't care. But they're just going to start naming names that Trump considers political opponents. Newly released documents show her attorney, David Oscar Marcus, told Congress that she will plead the fifth during her deposition unless she's granted immunity. Now, let's go ahead and milk that one. So, Todd Blanche goes down to Florida and says, okay, this is exactly what you're going to say, and this is what you're not going to say. And then you'll get a pardon. And then she's saying, unless she gets congressional immunity, that she'll plead the fifth. Now, even Comer said that she's not going to get congressional immunity. So this should be super interesting, because the more that this comes to light, just the worse it looks. Even more alarming, if she's given presidential clemency, Maxwell's threatening to testify publicly and fully cooperate. Translation, she'll talk, but only if she's protected, and only to clear Trump's name while throwing Democrats under the bus. This isn't about truth. It's a deal. A convicted sex trafficker who's also known to be a perjurer, mind you, she's also a perjurer, is asking for a pardon in exchange for partisan testimony. It's not justice, it's witness tampering. And that needs to be the words that we consistently use about this case. It's fucking witness tampering. Now the question is, why is it so important for them to be so, I suppose, hermetically sealed about this? Well, there's a pretty fucking solid reason. And that reason is because they can't keep the lies straight. Now, if you're going to be a liar, you got to be a good fucking liar. And you got to have a good memory. Well, that's not working out, because a new statement comes out that completely botches everything that they've said. And I mean, it's getting to the point where even people like Joe Rogan are like, do you expect us to buy this gaslighting? Like, we're not babies, I believe was his exact phrasing. And let's go ahead and take a look at how these, how the story's changed over time and why it's so important for him to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell and ensure that she gets a pardon.
And 18 that led to sex trafficking charges against Epstein and identified nearly 80 of his victims. Julie Brown, welcome to the NewsHour. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it's no secret that President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein knew each other. There's videos and photos confirming all of that. It was previously reported it was a real estate deal that led to their falling out in 2004. President Trump has talked about Jeffrey Epstein being a creep, and that's the reason he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. But on Air Force One on Tuesday, the president...
So, as you saw, that's two different excuses that have been talking points. The whole Epstein was a creep, so I kicked him out. And then the whole, yeah, it was actually over a land deal. That's exactly what it was. Okay, well then, as she said, why did he say this on Air Force One?
Offered this explanation for why their friendship ended.
And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people.
Julie, these are new details. So what do you make about this evolution of a response from the president?
Well, it raises a lot of new questions, I think. Apparently, it sounds like he knew that Epstein was whisking away or having Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, his accomplice, take some of these or lure some of these young women from the spa at Mar-a-Lago's. You have to wonder, he says people, plural, how many others were lured away, and what did Trump think he was doing with these young girls and women, or perhaps he already knew what Epstein was doing. I mean, we just don't know the answer to that. But it raises those questions, I think.
There's also real questions about the timeline here. The incident when Epstein was hiring away Mar-a-Lago employees was in 2000. The real estate fight was reportedly 2004.
Why are they not asking the biggest question that leads to all of it? And that's why were underage girls working at the spa at Mar-a-Lago?
Mr. Epstein was reportedly banned from Mar-a-Lago in 2007. So based on your reporting and what we know so far, can we say for sure what led to the break between the two men?
No, I don't think we know, because we've been told inconsistent stories. And even the latest iteration of this story doesn't make sense, using the words, that they were taking his people. What does that mean? Was there more than one young girl or women, or was he also taking groundskeepers? I mean, we don't know the answer to these questions, and it's troubling that the story sort of has changed.
We also know Attorney General Pam Bondi reportedly briefed the president that his name appeared in the files earlier this year. Of course, the appearance of anyone's name in the files does not indicate any wrongdoing.
But didn't Dan Bongino and Kash Patel say there was no files? And that's one of their biggest problems they're having, is Pam Bondi said she has all this information. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel say there's nothing. Now all of a sudden, Trump's name is in all this information, but it had to be redacted. But this is a hoax that was written by the Democrats to implicate themselves in files that don't exist. Okay. It reminds me of John Lovett's, yeah, that's the ticket.
We know there's a number of prominent MAGA voices and Democrats calling for the files to be released. Do we know what could be in those files related to the president?
Well, yes, we do. We know, for example, that President Trump was on Epstein's plane, and the plane manifests, or at least some of them, were part of the FBI investigation at some point. We also know that there were message pads that were found in Epstein's Palm Beach home at the time of his arrest in 2005, 2006. And Trump's name was on some of those message pads. And we know, of course, that Trump is in his so-called little black book, or this directory of phone numbers that had become part of the case. So we know the three examples of him being in there. But one would think that wouldn't be enough to block a release of the material, because all that stuff is already public.
What about from Ghislaine Maxwell? We know the Deputy U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche spent a couple of days down in Florida where she is imprisoned questioning her. We know Congress has subpoenaed her to testify. What could we learn from her at this stage?
Well, she knows everything. I mean, there's no doubt that she was the person that started or helped launch Epstein's sex trafficking operation. She was the person who came up with the idea of going around to Palm Beach schools, to gyms, to spas, and recruiting these girls, leaving her business card around. And we know.
It sounds like the exact kind of person that Trump would pardon too. And I'm seeing certain commentators on the right being like, well, if she gives a whole list of names, then giving her a pardon is worth it. Now, it's going to be bullshit because she's going to give a bullshit list of bullshit names, and to get a pardon out of that and still be treated like she was some kind of like, I don't know, fucking martyr for giving out a bullshit list to get a pardon. It's the exact kind of nefarious bullshit. There's the reason why I played that video earlier, why it's so important for the right to lie.
Know this because the valet who drove her to these various places testified in court that he did this. So she knows, exactly how this whole thing operated because she helped formulate it, quite frankly.
Julie, have you continued to stay in touch with the survivors? Do they want to see the files released right now?
I think there's some mixed emotions about whether the files should be released because, they've been disappointed so many times, and every time that there's a hope that we're going to get closer to perhaps finding justice for them, and that justice to them means that some of not only the other men that were involved, but also some of these enablers would be held accountable for what they did. And every time it seems like we might be getting closer, the door slams in their face. And I think at some point, they're just feeling that it's never going to really become public, that somebody's covering it up because there are so many important people involved. And so I think they have mixed emotions about how to handle that because they're afraid. One of them did tell me, if the president of the United States doesn't want to release these files, there must be something big in there. And that makes me very, very nervous.
Julie Brown, investigative reporter at the
I think that not only is there something majorly big in there, but I think there's also a lot of people who do not want to be implicated just simply because they know that their connections run deep too. And once, like I said, once we start pulling on that one little thread, an entire ball of yarn is going to collapse. Appreciate everybody hanging out with me today. I'm going to play a clip real fast about lying, because we've talked about lying so much today. And well, one of my favorite examples of an absolute blatant lie that has come to light and is a perfect example of it is the Hulkster. Hogan is granted immunity for anything he would reveal. Oh, really? Is that the case?
Hogan is granted immunity for anything he would reveal on the stand about how he got his steroids from Dr. Zahorian while working for McMahon.
Though Hogan contends that his testimony was the reason the boss wasn't found guilty.
Vince didn't go to jail for 17 years because of me.
Hulk had simmed down significantly during this period, given all the controversy, since the Hulkster was considered the proverbial poster boy for steroids in wrestling at the time. Hogan had also infamously lied about using steroids on the Arsenio Hall show in '91, after Vince wanted him to come clean and tell the truth.
I've trained 20 years, 2 hours a day to look like I do, but the things that I am not is I'm not a steroid abuser, and I do not use steroids.
I myself personally have injected Hulk Hogan with anabolic steroids.
I injected Hogan with steroids many times.
Oh, he told me he'd been taking steroids for 1 full year at the time I met him. I believe his surgeries and all of his operations are linked to steroid use.
The common laugh used to be when he used to tell the kids to say their prayers and take their vitamins. In the dressing room, we'd always laugh and say, orals or injectables?
Yep, that was the guy when he tried to make a union. That's Jesse the Body Ventura. He tried to make a union for the wrestlers, and Hulk Hogan ended up telling Vince McMahon about it because Hogan was making all kinds of money, and last thing he wanted to do is, have to share that with anybody. Well, we appreciate everybody today for coming and hanging out with me at ViperTV. Make sure you come back tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with your questions for me and DJ Hammer of Venus, because it's going to be a party in the Discord, on Twitch, and on YouTube. Until then, later, skaters.
I can just spin records all the time.
Run into the bathroom and I'm covered in blood. Like I had put my tooth through my bottom lip.
For music, for gaming and pro-liberty game rants, that's skipfriesjr.net.
Incoming raid.